Picture yourself standing beneath an ancient, star-studded sky in the Australian outback, your eyes tracing the constellations that have guided humanity for millennia. Now imagine discovering that the very rocks beneath your feet hold secrets far more profound than anyone ever realized, secrets that connect the land to the cosmos in ways modern science is only beginning to unravel. For generations, Aboriginal rock art has been admired for its beauty and cultural significance. But what if these ancient markings were more than just art? What if they were a sophisticated celestial blueprint carefully crafted to map the stars, track planetary movements, and preserve cosmic knowledge passed down through countless generations? This isn't just speculation, it's a revelation emerging from the intersection of archaeology, astronomy, and Indigenous wisdom. Across Australia, researchers and Aboriginal elders are uncovering astonishing evidence that these rock paintings serve as astronomical records, encoding precise knowledge of solstices, equinoxes, and even rare celestial events like supernova and comet appearances. These artworks, some dating back tens of thousands of years, appear to document the night sky with remarkable accuracy, suggesting that ancient Aboriginal cultures possessed an understanding of the cosmos that rivaled, and in some ways surpassed, other early civilizations. Join us on an extraordinary journey into one of humanity's oldest and most profound connections to the universe. We'll explore how these ancient artists transformed stone and pigment into a living library of celestial knowledge, blending mythology with precise astronomical observation. From the emu in the sky constellation mirrored in rock art to alignments that mark the changing seasons, we'll uncover how Aboriginal cultures wove the cosmos into their daily lives, their stories, and their very understanding of existence. This is more than a historical investigation, it's an invitation to see the night sky through the eyes of those who first mapped its wonders, and to rediscover a cosmic legacy written in stone. To truly appreciate the celestial secrets hidden within these ancient galleries, we must first understand the profound cultural and historical context from which they emerged. Aboriginal rock art is not a single monolithic tradition but a vast and diverse tapestry of creative expression woven across the entire Australian continent over an almost unimaginable span of time. The oldest known sites, like those in the Kimberley region and Arnhem Land, are estimated to be more than 60,000 years old, making them some of the earliest artistic endeavors in all of human history. This isn't just art, it's a continuous record of the world's oldest living culture, a lineage of knowledge and storytelling that stretches back to a time when Neanderthals still walked the earth. Across different regions, distinct styles and techniques flourished, each with its own unique voice yet connected by common threads of spiritual belief and cosmological understanding. In the tropical north, you find dynamic figures painted with fine cross-hatching, known as rack, which carries sacred geometric patterns connecting the material world to the spirit realm. On the sandstone escarpments of the west, the majestic Wandjina figures spirits of cloud and rain, look out with large, haloed heads and eyes that seem to hold the wisdom of the ages. In the arid center, ancient petroglyphs were pecked into rock surfaces, depicting totemic animals and intricate symbols. The methods were as varied as the styles, using naturally occurring ochres in rich reds, yellows, and whites, mixed with water or animal fats, and applied with brushes made from twigs, reeds, or even human hair. But to view these creations as mere decoration is to miss their entire purpose. These sites were, and for many Indigenous communities still are, living classrooms and sacred libraries. They served as multidimensional educational tools where astronomy, law, history, and morality were all encoded into the narratives surrounding the art. An image of a kangaroo might teach tracking skills, but its position relative to a series of dots could also chart the movement of a star cluster, signaling the right time to hunt. A complex scene of ancestral beings might narrate a creation story while simultaneously mapping the landscape they formed and the celestial bodies that guided them. This knowledge was not open for all to see. It was often tiered with deeper layers of understanding revealed only through initiation and under the guidance of elders during elaborate ceremonies. The sites themselves are frequently located in places of great power and significance: caves that align with the solstice sun, rock shelters that frame the rising of a particular star, or waterholes whose reflections capture the moon at its zenith. They are the physical anchors of the dreaming, the timeless cosmic law that intertwines the past, present, and future with the land and the sky above it. This deep, integrated view of the world is the essential foundation that allows us to begin decoding the astronomical genius embedded in the stone. To grasp the astronomical significance hidden within these ancient galleries, we must first venture into the heart of Aboriginal cosmology itself, the dreaming or dreamtime. This is not merely a collection of ancient stories. It is a living, breathing philosophical framework that defines the relationship between the land, the people, and the cosmos. The dreaming refers to the sacred era of creation, a time beyond time when ancestral beings emerged from the earth and the sky to shape the world and establish the laws of existence. But crucially, this creative epoch did not end. It continues eternally, infusing the present moment with its power and meaning, connecting every rock, river, and star to its primordial origin. Within this worldview, the division between the earthly and the celestial is an illusion. Ancestral beings are not confined to one realm. Their essence is woven throughout all of creation. A creator spirit might have formed a mountain range with its body, given its name to a clan, and then ascended into the heavens to become a prominent star or constellation. This is why so many rock art figures possess this dual nature. The Wandjina, for instance, are powerful sky beings who bring the seasonal rains, and their depictions in art, with their large eyes, less faces, and radiating halos, are often interpreted as representing not just the cloud spirits but also celestial bodies like the moon or sun, their power visualized for all to see. The art becomes a permanent anchor point, a place where the terrestrial manifestation and the celestial identity of the ancestor are unified in a single image. The narratives of the dreaming provide the profound mythological context for every celestial phenomenon observed in the night sky. Instead of impersonal balls of gas and dust, the stars are ancestors, animals, and epic events frozen in time. The story of the Seven Sisters, for example, which is told across many Aboriginal nations with startling consistency, explains the Pleiades star cluster as a group of women being pursued by a man represented by the stars in Orion's belt. This narrative doesn't just identify the stars, it encodes their relative movement across the night sky, their seasonal disappearance and reappearance, and their connection to specific times for gathering food or holding ceremonies. The rock art that depicts this story uses specific compositional arrangements to lock this knowledge in place: 7 figures in a cluster, often with a larger, pursuing figure nearby, creating a celestial map told through character and plot. This encoding of knowledge extends to planetary movements and rare cosmic events. The appearance of a comet might be recorded in art as the fiery trail of an ancestral spirit on a journey, while a supernova's sudden brilliance could be interpreted as a great battle in the sky world, its depiction ensuring the event is remembered for millennia. The symbols and patterns used are not arbitrary, they are a sophisticated visual language. A series of concentric circles might represent a sacred waterhole, a campsite, or a particular star, depending on its context and the knowledge of the viewer. Lines connecting figures can chart the path of an ancestor's travel across the land or their ascent into the heavens, mapping both geography and astronomy onto the same stone canvas. This intricate interplay of myth and observation means that Aboriginal rock art is far more than a representation of the cosmos. It is an active participant in it. The sites are often deliberately positioned to interact with celestial events. A painting of an emu might be oriented so that the shadow of a rock ledge falls upon it in a specific way during the full moon, or a particular crack in the ceiling might allow a shaft of sunlight to illuminate a star symbol only on the dawn of the winter solstice. The art, the land, and the sky are in constant dialogue, and the dreaming is the language they speak. It is this holistic understanding that story, art, and science are inseparable that transforms these ancient sites into a truly unique and enduring celestial blueprint. This profound and integrated understanding of the universe, however, was completely invisible to the first European eyes that fell upon it, arriving with a worldview steeped in their own cultural and scientific paradigms. The early settlers, missionaries, and even pioneering anthropologists looked upon these intricate galleries and saw only primitive scratchings. They were blinded by a pervasive bias that equated technological advancement with intellectual sophistication, dismissing Aboriginal cultures as simple hunter-gatherers incapable of complex astronomical thought. Where Indigenous elders saw a celestial map, these observers saw childish doodles, a fundamental misreading that would stall scientific appreciation for this knowledge for well over a century. Consider the accounts of early missionaries in Arnhem Land during the 19th century. They meticulously documented the stunning X-ray art, images showing the internal skeletons and organs of animals and spirits, but they interpreted them solely as hunting magic or simple artistic whimsy. The possibility that the intricate patterns of dots and lines surrounding a figure might chart a star cluster or the path of the moon was a concept entirely outside their frame of reference. They sought to catalogue what they saw as exotic curiosities, completely missing the sophisticated scientific data encoded within the imagery. Their journals speak of curious markings and idol worship, revealing a lens clouded by colonial and religious superiority that could not conceive of a different form of science. This oversight was not merely passive, it was actively detrimental. Colonial authorities, viewing the sites as having no value, often sanctioned their destruction or allowed them to be vandalized. Sacred rock shelters were quarried for building materials, and panels adorned with millennia of knowledge were whitewashed or defaced by graffiti. Each act of destruction erased not just a painting, but a chapter from humanity's collective astronomical history. The few academics who did take an interest, such as early 20th century anthropologists, often approached their study through a rigid Western taxonomic system. They would separate art from astronomy, mythology from mathematics, categories that are utterly alien and reductive when applied to the holistic nature of Aboriginal knowledge. The consequence of this cultural myopia was a devastating delay. While archaeologists were unraveling the astronomical alignments of Stonehenge and the pyramids by the late 19th century, the even older celestial secrets of the Australian continent remained locked away, not through any complexity of the code itself, but through the failure of outsiders to understand the key. It wasn't until the latter half of the 20th century, with the slow growth of collaborative research practices that began to respectfully engage with Indigenous elders as knowledge custodians, that this long-hidden truth started to emerge. The recognition that these artworks were a deliberate and precise celestial blueprint forced a dramatic reevaluation of what constitutes scientific achievement, challenging the very definition of astronomy itself. The turning point began not with a grand theory, but with a slow, respectful shift in approach. A handful of researchers, often working on the fringes of mainstream academia, started to do something revolutionary. They began to listen. Instead of arriving with preconceived notions and clipboards, they built relationships, spending years earning the trust of Aboriginal communities. They understood that the knowledge wasn't theirs to take, but a sacred tradition to be shared only with permission and under guidance. This collaborative model transformed the field from one of extraction to one of partnership, and the revelations that followed were nothing short of astounding. Among these pioneering figures was Percy Trezise, a pilot and artist who formed a deep friendship with the Aboriginal elder Dick Ruffsey in the 1960s. Flying over Cape York Peninsula, Trezise was granted access to remote rock art sites that few outsiders had ever seen. But it was through Ruffsey's explanations that the images truly came to life. What Trezise had initially seen as abstract patterns and beautiful figures, Ruffsey revealed as intricate maps of the dreaming filled with celestial markers. A series of dots wasn't just decorative, it was the Milky Way. A humanoid figure with extended arms wasn't just a stylized drawing. It was a representation of the constellation Orion, known as the first man in many traditions. Trezise's meticulous recordings, guided by Ruffsey's interpretations, became some of the first published works to suggest a profound and deliberate astronomical link. This groundwork was built upon by researchers like Robert Edwards of the South Australian Museum, who took a more systematic approach to documentation in the 1970s and 80s. While careful not to disclose sacred information, Edwards' extensive surveys helped preserve a record of sites that were rapidly deteriorating. His work, often conducted in consultation with communities, helped establish that certain motifs and symbol sets, like specific arrangements of circles or lines, recurred across vast distances, hinting at a shared astronomical language that transcended linguistic and cultural boundaries. He helped move the conversation from isolated examples to a recognizable pattern of celestial encoding across the continent. The field truly leaped into the scientific mainstream with the arrival of astrophysicists like Ray Norris. Bringing the rigorous tools of modern astronomy to this ancient knowledge, Norris and his colleagues began a project of cross-verification that yielded breathtaking results. Working closely with Aboriginal elders from communities like those in the Central Desert and Arnhem Land, Norris would listen to the stories associated with a particular rock art panel. He then used astronomical software to wind back the celestial clock, sometimes tens of thousands of years, to see if the described event aligned with the sky at the time the art was created. The correlations were stunning. One of the most compelling examples emerged from the stories of the Fire Devil, a bright, fiery spirit that descended from the sky. By comparing these oral histories to the art that depicted them, Norris and his collaborators were able to propose that they were accurate records of meteorite impacts or spectacular airburst events. In another case, a painting in Arnhem Land that was said to depict a creator spirit taking fire from a bandicoot and throwing it into the sky was investigated as a potential record of a supernova. By dating the art and then searching historical astronomical records for a supernova visible from that location at that time, researchers found a match, suggesting the painting might be an eyewitness account of the supernova that created the Vela remnant, an event that would have lit up the night sky over 12,000 years ago. These collaborations fundamentally rewrote history. They proved that Aboriginal astronomical knowledge was not merely mythological, but was based on meticulous, long-term observation and record-keeping. It demonstrated a scientific methodology that used narrative and art as its data storage system, preserving complex information across hundreds of generations. This was a science that was holistic, intertwined with law, ecology, and spirituality, yet it was science nonetheless. The work of these researchers, guided by Indigenous custodians, finally allowed the Western world to begin reading the celestial blueprint that had been inscribed on the Australian landscape for 60 millennia. Perhaps no single example better illustrates the seamless union of sky, land, and story than the emu in the sky. This is not a constellation in the Western sense, built by connecting the bright dots of stars. Instead, it is a breathtaking celestial silhouette sculpted from the dark, dusty lanes of the Milky Way itself. To see it, you must look not at the light, but into the profound darkness between it. During the autumn and winter months in the southern hemisphere, the galactic center arches high overhead, and there, stretching from the Coalsack Nebula near the Southern Cross down through the heart of the galaxy, the vast dark form of an emu emerges, its head, round body, and long legs etched in cosmic negative space against the shimmering starlight background. This celestial pattern is not merely observed, it is deeply integrated into the seasonal calendar and ecological knowledge of many Aboriginal nations. The appearance of the emu in the sky changes throughout the year, and each posture holds a specific meaning. In early autumn, the emu appears to be sitting down, which is interpreted across cultures from New South Wales to Victoria as a sign that the bird is now nesting on the ground. This celestial cue signals that real emus are laying their eggs, letting people know it is the optimal time to gather this rich and important food source. As the months progress, the emu in the night sky seems to stand up, its legs becoming more defined. By winter, it is fully upright and stretched out, indicating that the eggs have hatched and the chicks are mature. This tells hunters that the egg-gathering season is over, and that the adult emus, now lean and protective, are less ideal for hunting. The genius of this system is its replication in rock art, creating a permanent earthly counterpoint to the shifting sky above. At numerous sites, most famously within the Sydney Basin area like Bulgundry Art Site and around Koo Ring Guy Chase National Park, the celestial emu is rendered on rock surfaces in a direct and tangible form. These are not simple pictures of a bird, they are carefully calibrated astronomical diagrams. The engravings often show the emu in different positions that mirror its various celestial orientations throughout the seasonal cycle. Some panels depict the emu with its legs tucked underneath, perfectly corresponding to its sitting position in the autumn sky. Others show it standing tall, matching its winter appearance. One of the most profound and eloquent examples of this connection is found at the Unveil country's Namadgi National Park, near the present-day Australian Capital Territory. Here, a rock art panel shows an emu figure, and its orientation is such that during the autumn months, the shadow of a nearby rock ledge falls directly across the engraving in a way that aligns with the emu in the sky's position at that exact time of year. The art, the landform, and the celestial event are in a perfect, intentional dialogue. It's a three-dimensional observatory where the painting is not just a representation but an active participant in marking time, a stone dial pointing to the heavens. This intricate knowledge system demonstrates a phenomenal depth of observational science. Aboriginal elders were not just noting the position of a shape in the sky, they were cross-referencing it with detailed ethological knowledge of emu behavior, knowing exactly when they nest, how long their eggs take to incubate, and how their body condition changes throughout the year. The rock art served as the immutable record of this complex ecological and astronomical relationship, a permanent teaching tool ensuring that this vital seasonal knowledge, critical for survival, was passed down with precision and accuracy for generation after generation. It stands as a powerful testament to a science that is not separate from culture, but deeply and poetically embedded within it. While the emu in the sky offers a profound example of dark space astronomy, one of the most compelling and widespread celestial narratives woven into the very fabric of the continent is the story of the Pleiades star cluster. Known across hundreds of Aboriginal nations as the Seven Sisters, or by names like Makara in the Adelaide region and Kunkarankalpa in the central and western deserts, this tight grouping of stars is far more than a pretty sparkle in the night sky. It is a central character in an epic creation story, a precise seasonal calendar, and a cosmological drama whose key scenes are permanently etched into rock shelters from coast to coast. Unlike Western astronomy, which often sees the Pleiades as a simple object, Aboriginal traditions perceive it as a dynamic, unfolding story of pursuit, kinship, and survival, with each element of the narrative corresponding to a specific astronomical observation. The core story, told with remarkable consistency across vast distances, follows a similar arc. It involves a group of 7 beautiful sisters being pursued by a man, often represented by the stars in Orion's belt or the constellation Orion himself. In some versions, this pursuer is a shape-shifting sorcerer named Niru or Jewel of Binji. The narrative explains the cluster's visible properties, why one star might appear fainter than the others, often a sister hiding or falling behind, and the reason for their rapid movement across the night sky, interpreted as a desperate flight from their relentless hunter. This story was not mere entertainment. It was a sophisticated mnemonic device, a way to remember and teach complex celestial mechanics through a relatable and unforgettable human drama. The rock art depicting this saga served as the storybook, the classroom, and the astronomical almanac all in one. The timing of the Pleiades' appearance and disappearance was critically important for survival, dictating the rhythms of life for countless communities. Its heliacal rising, its first visible appearance in the dawn sky just before sunrise, and its heliacal setting, its final vanishing act in the evening twilight, were among the most significant annual celestial events. For the Wardaman people of the Northern Territory, the rising of the Pleiades at dawn signaled the arrival of the cool winter season, a time to light fires for warmth and begin a focused period of hunting for certain game. Conversely, for the Pitjantjatjara people of the Central Desert, the cluster's setting in the evening sky marked the start of the hottest part of the year, a warning that resources would become scarce and that people needed to be near reliable water sources. This astronomical knowledge was encoded into rock art with incredible specificity. At sites like the cave paintings in the Uluru region of South Australia, we find panels featuring 7 identical figures, often depicted as a close-knit group. The artistic style varies by region. They might be painted as simple dots, as elegant anthropomorphic figures, or surrounded by radiating lines to signify their luminous power, but the number 7 is a constant, a direct correlation to the stellar cluster. In many panels, these 7 figures are accompanied by a larger, often menacing male figure. The compositional arrangement is deliberate. The sisters are frequently painted huddled together or shown in a line that mirrors their path across the sky, while the pursuing figure is positioned to the side or below them, forever separated in a celestial chase frozen in time. Some of the most eloquent examples are found in the Kimberley region's Wandjina art, where the 7 sisters are depicted with distinctive halo-like headdresses, symbolizing their celestial origin and their connection to life-giving rain. The art doesn't just tell the story, it often interacts with it. At certain times of the year, the angle of the sun or moon might illuminate only the 7 figures, leaving the pursuer in shadow, or a crack in the rock might align with the real cluster's position on a specific night. These sites transform from static galleries into dynamic celestial instruments, where the art, the natural rock formation, and the sky itself work in concert to mark the passage of time and the turning of the seasons, a permanent testament to a culture that saw no separation between the heavens above and the earth below. Beyond the stories told in star clusters, the ancient custodians of this land engineered their very galleries to harness the power of the sun itself, creating monumental calendars in stone that marked the year's pivotal turning points with breathtaking accuracy. Imagine a deep, secluded rock shelter, its walls adorned with ancient paintings that remains in shadow for most of the year. Then, for just a few minutes on the dawn of the winter solstice, a single narrow beam of sunlight pierces a fissure in the ceiling, traveling across the wall to illuminate one specific figure, a radiant ancestor or a potent symbol. This was not a chance occurrence, it was precise astronomical engineering, a way of anchoring time itself to the sacred landscape. Across Australia, numerous sites function with this celestial precision, serving as sophisticated solar observatories that governed every aspect of life. One of the most well-documented examples is found at Encode, a deeply significant site for the Ngunnawal people along the Murray River in South Australia. Here, the rock art is not merely decorative, it is an instructional panel for tracking time. The walls are covered in a series of meticulously engraved circles and radiating lines. For generations, European archaeologists catalogued these motifs as abstract symbols, However, when elders shared their knowledge, a stunning truth was revealed. These engravings are a complex calendar mapping the phases and cycles of the moon. Each circle represents a full moon, while the connecting lines chart its journey across the sky and its relationship to the seasons. This lunar calendar was essential for predicting the river's ebb and flow, knowing when certain fish would spawn, and scheduling ceremonies that were tied to specific lunar phases. The site itself is oriented so that the changing angle of moonlight throughout the night and the year interacts with the engravings, turning the entire cliff face into a dynamic, interactive astronomical chart. For solar alignments on a grand scale, the ancient stone arrangement at Wurdi Wong in Victoria stands as one of the world's most intriguing and enigmatic ancient observatories. Known to the local Watarung people as a place of great age and significance, the site consists of around 100 basalt stones, carefully placed to form a large egg-shaped ring. For years, its purpose was a mystery. Then, astrophysicists like Ray Norris from the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization took precise measurements of the stones' positions and their alignment with the surrounding horizon. Their findings were astonishing. The major axis of the stone arrangement is aligned almost perfectly along the east-west direction, marking the equinoxes when the sun rises and sets directly along this line. Even more remarkably, several key stones align with the setting sun's position at the summer and winter solstices. This is not a rough approximation. The alignments are precise, indicating a deep, long-term understanding of the solar cycle. The purpose of such sites was profoundly practical, weaving astronomy directly into the fabric of survival and social order. The solstice was not an abstract concept, it was a critical signal embedded in the environment. The winter solstice, for instance, marked the point of the year's deepest cold, but also promised the slow return of the sun and warmer weather. This was a time for large communal gatherings. Ceremonies held at these precisely aligned sites would have reinforced social bonds, settled disputes, and arranged marriages, all under the watchful eye of the rejuvenating sun. For food gathering, the solar calendar was indispensable. The summer solstice might signal that certain fruits were ripe or that a particular animal was at its fattest, ensuring the most efficient use of energy and resources. This advanced understanding of cyclical time allowed for a society that was not living hand to mouth, but planning, forecasting, and thriving in harmony with the continent's often harsh rhythms. These solar markers represent a pinnacle of astronomical achievement, demonstrating a shift from observation to active manipulation of the environment to measure time. Unlike a painting that simply depicts a celestial event, these engineered sites perform astronomy. The sunlight becomes a moving pointer on a stone dial, the stone circles become fixed sighting tools, and the art itself becomes part of the mechanism. This shows a conceptual leap into applied science, using immutable stone to track the cyclical movements of the sun, creating a permanent and reliable calendar that would function for millennia. It reveals an intellectual tradition that was both deeply spiritual and rigorously empirical, seeing no contradiction between the sacred significance of a solstice and the precise geometrical knowledge required to mark its occurrence year after year, generation after generation. While the sun provided the broad strokes of the annual calendar, the moon's intricate dance offered a more nuanced rhythm to life, one that ancient Aboriginal astronomers tracked with extraordinary precision. The moon was not a distant, impersonal rock. It was a powerful being, a creator spirit, and a crucial marker of time that governed everything from ceremonial life to the best moments for fishing and foraging. This deep understanding of lunar cycles is permanently recorded in rock art galleries across the continent, not through written numbers or complex equations, but through a sophisticated language of marks, circles, and pattern notations that served as both observational records and teaching tools for countless generations. In the soft sandstone shelters of Arnhem Land, for instance, researchers working with Indigenous knowledge custodians have documented series of precise, repeated marks, lines, dots, or small crescents often arranged in neat rows or circular patterns. To an untrained eye, they might appear as simple decorative borders or counting tallies. However, when elders explain their meaning, a complex lunar calendar emerges. A row of 28, 29, or 30 marks isn't just a number. It represents the complete cycle of a lunar month from one new moon to the next. These counts are often found alongside paintings of animals or plants, creating a direct link between the phase of the moon and a specific activity. A series of 28 marks next to a painting of a turtle might indicate that this is the best lunar phase for hunting turtles, encoding ecological knowledge within an astronomical framework. This tracking went far beyond simply counting days. Many art panels feature sequences of circles that shift from fully filled to half to empty and back again in a clear visual representation of the moon's waxing and waning. At some sites, these sequences are accompanied by depictions of the moon itself in its various phases, often anthropomorphized as a rounded figure holding a boomerang representing the crescent or shown with a partially obscured face. The most compelling evidence for advanced lunar knowledge comes from sites that contain not just one cycle, but multiple interlocking sequences. These appear to track longer periods, such as the progression of seasons over a year or even more complex cycles linking the moon and sun, demonstrating a conceptual grasp of time that required sustained observation over decades, if not centuries. This meticulous record-keeping provided the foundational data that may have even allowed for the prediction of eclipses, one of the most dramatic and potentially frightening celestial events. Across numerous Aboriginal cultures, oral traditions describe eclipses with a striking consistency, not as random acts of magic, but as predictable interactions between celestial beings. A common narrative describes the sun being momentarily eaten or covered by a great sky spirit, often a malevolent one. In the traditions of the Yolngu people of Arnhem Land, a solar eclipse is caused by the Molla, or sun woman, being temporarily hidden by the moon man during their celestial meeting. The Luritja people of Central Australia tell of a spirit named Tapara who consumes the sun, causing the temporary darkness. These are not just myths, they are sophisticated cosmological models that explain the mechanism of an eclipse. The rock art provides physical evidence that these events were not only explained but were also anticipated. One of the most discussed examples is a panel from a site in the Kimberley region that depicts a large, circular form, the sun, with a series of concentric circles inside it and a dark, rounded shape overlapping its edge. When researchers showed this image to senior custodians, the interpretation was immediate and unequivocal. It recorded a solar eclipse. The overlapping shape was identified as the moon passing in front of the sun, and the concentric circles were said to represent the sun's power or its radiating light being obscured. The ability to predict such an event requires a deep understanding of the Saros cycle, the approximately 18-year period after which the sun, moon, and earth return to nearly the same relative geometry, causing a similar pattern of eclipses to repeat. While we may never find a rock art panel that explicitly maps out this 18-year cycle, the cumulative evidence is persuasive. The long-term lunar records, the precise oral traditions describing the eclipse mechanism, and the specific art depictions all point towards a culture that recognized the patterns in these celestial occurrences. This knowledge would have been empowering, transforming a terrifying celestial phenomenon into a predictable, understood event, allowing communities to prepare spiritually and psychologically for the sun's brief disappearance, secure in the knowledge that their ancestral stories held the key to its safe return. Moving from the complex cycles of the moon to the brilliant, predictable wanderings of a single planet, we find another layer of sophistication in Aboriginal astronomical knowledge. Across northern Australia, the planet Venus held a place of immense significance, its dual identity as both the morning and evening star woven into the very foundation of creation narratives and ritual life. Unlike Western astronomy, which sees a single celestial body, many Aboriginal cultures perceived these two appearances as distinct but related entities, often powerful ancestral beings whose cyclical dance across the horizon dictated the timing of essential activities and whose stories were forever immortalized on rock shelter walls. In the rich mythological tapestry of Arnhem Land, Venus is frequently embodied by a creator spirit known as Barnambir, a beautiful and powerful woman who carries a torch of light as she journeys between the sky and the sea. As the morning star, her appearance in the dawn sky before the sun arrives is a signal of immense spiritual importance, often associated with fire, purification, and the guiding of the souls of the deceased to their final resting place. Her light is seen as a beacon cutting through the darkness to herald the new day. When she appears as the evening star, however, her role shifts. She becomes a marker of time, her position indicating the right moment to begin certain ceremonies or to hunt specific nocturnal animals. This duality is not a contradiction but a reflection of her complex nature, a being whose different phases hold different powers and meanings for the people on Earth. This deep knowledge was translated into the rock art with remarkable clarity and consistency. On the ornate surfaces of Arnhem Land shelters, Barnambir is most often depicted as a humanoid figure, but she is almost always surrounded by a key identifying feature, radiating lines or a halo of dots that symbolize her intense, shimmering light. She is frequently shown in a dynamic composition, positioned between other celestial symbols, a crescent moon, a series of stars, or the sun, to illustrate her relationship to them. In some panels, she is painted near the mouth of a rainbow serpent, representing her connection to the creative power of the dreaming. In others, she is shown alongside dugong or fish, linking her appearance to the optimal time for hunting these marine resources. The art does not simply picture a star, it diagrams its functional role within a larger cosmic and ecological system. The precision of this astronomical tracking is what truly astonishes. Aboriginal elders carefully observed Venus's synodic cycle, the 584-day period it takes for the planet to return to the same position relative to the Sun and Earth. They noted its periods of visibility as a morning star, its disappearance behind the sun, and its re-emergence as an evening star. This wasn't abstract stargazing, it was practical timekeeping. In many communities, the first pre-dawn sighting of Venus after a period of invisibility would trigger a specific ceremony, a celebration of her return that also served to officially mark a new seasonal chapter. Its position on the horizon at certain times of the year was a reliable indicator for when to expect the first rains, when to harvest certain bush fruits, or when to expect specific species of fish to come into the estuaries. This encoded knowledge ensured the survival and continuity of culture. A painting of the morning star positioned above a particular animal wasn't just a pretty scene. It was a stored instruction, a permanent record stating that when Venus appears in that part of the sky at dawn, that animal is at its most plentiful or its fur is at its prime. The compositional relationships in the art are deliberate data visualizations. The relative distance between a Venus symbol and a symbol for a food source or a waterhole provided a visual guide to timing. This long-term, meticulous observation and recording of a planet's movements, seamlessly integrated with law, ecology, and spirituality, stands as a powerful testament to a scientific tradition that viewed the entire universe as an interconnected, living text. While Venus charted its intricate dance as a morning and evening deity, another powerful celestial figure dominated the winter skies of the southern hemisphere, its familiar belt of 3 bright stars recognized across the globe. But in Aboriginal astronomy, the western constellation of Orion is utterly transformed. Across northern Australia, this star pattern is most famously known as Jolpan, the canoe, a central character in an epic narrative of creation, tragedy, and seasonal change that is dramatically illustrated in ancient rock art. This is not the story of a mighty hunter, but of a group of fishermen whose actions in the dreaming forever altered the world and left their likeness, and their warning etched in the stars and on stone. The core story, told by the Yolngu people of Arnhem Land and other groups across the top end, recounts how three brothers of the Kingfish clan went on a fishing expedition in their canoe, Julpan. Ignoring the sacred laws of their people, they caught and ate a forbidden fish, a kingfish that was itself a manifestation of an ancestral being. As punishment for this transgression, the great creator spirit Nyapilingu summoned a waterspout, a mighty whirlwind that lifted the brothers, their canoe, and all the fish they had caught high into the sky, where they were frozen in place as a constellation. The three stars of Orion's belt are the brothers sitting in their canoe. The fainter stars above and below form the outlines of the canoe itself and the tangled fishing line, while the shimmering Orion Nebula is seen as the forbidden kingfish still on the hook, a permanent celestial reminder of the consequences of breaking tribal law. This powerful moral and cosmological tale is rendered in rock art with specific and meaningful iconography. In the rock shelters of Arnhem Land, Julpan is not depicted as a set of connected dots mimicking the star pattern. Instead, artists painted the narrative itself. You see the elegant, long form of the canoe, often filled with multiple figures. The brothers are frequently shown with distinct headdresses or body paint that identifies their clan, anchoring the celestial story to a specific people and place. In some panels, the forbidden fish is depicted clearly below or beside the canoe, its size and significance emphasized. The compositional arrangement is vital. The canoe is almost always oriented horizontally, mirroring its journey across the river of the Milky Way, and its position on the rock face can often be correlated to the constellation's path across the night sky at different times of the year. The appearance of Julpan in the evening sky was not just a prompt for storytelling, it was a critical environmental signal. Its heliacal rising in the early evening, just after sunset, around the month of October, signaled the imminent arrival of the wet season, the period known as Gajug. The rising of the canoe in the northeast coincided with the buildup of humidity, the arrival of monsoon clouds, and the stirring of powerful storms. This was a time of both danger and abundance. The art served as a mnemonic device for this seasonal shift. A painting of Julpan positioned near symbols for rain or lightning, or above depictions of fat monsoon season barramundi, created a direct visual link between the celestial event and its earthly consequences. It told people to prepare for the rains, to move camp to higher ground, and to ready their fishing spears for the coming bounty. This knowledge was deeply practical and essential for survival. The rising of Julpan told people that the estuaries would soon be flooded with fresh, nutrient-rich water, triggering mass spawning events for fish and crustaceans. It signaled that certain plant foods would soon be fruiting. Conversely, its gradual disappearance from the evening sky later in the season marked the transition to drier weather and a shift in hunting and gathering strategies. The rock art panels functioned as permanent communal calendars. Elders would use them to teach the younger generations, pointing to the painting of the canoe in the sky and explaining, "When you see this group of stars return to that part of the evening sky, remember the story of the three brothers. It is a warning to follow our law, and it is a sign that the life-giving rains are near. It is time to prepare." The art fused astronomy, ethics, ecology, and meteorology into a single, cohesive system of knowledge, ensuring that the vital lessons of the dreaming and the practical rhythms of the natural world were preserved for all time. But no stars held more practical and spiritual significance for navigating the vast Australian continent than the brilliant, unchanging patterns of the southern sky, particularly the constellation known to Europeans as the Southern Cross and the two bright pointer stars that flank it. In the endless darkness of the outback, far from any artificial light, these celestial landmarks were more than just pretty lights. They were a fixed compass, a sacred clock, and a profound creation story all rolled into one. Across countless Aboriginal nations, this compact constellation was not seen as a cross at all, but reimagined through the lens of the local environment and cosmology. In many traditions of Eastern Australia, it is a mighty wedge-tailed eagle, its wings outstretched in flight with the pointer stars Alpha and Beta Centauri, often seen as its two faithful pursuing hunters or as throwing sticks launched to bring it down. For coastal communities, the same stars might form a stingray gliding through the dark river of the Milky Way, its long tail traced by the stars of the cross and its eyes marked by the pointers. This act of renaming wasn't mere poetry. It was the first step in a sophisticated process of encoding vital navigational and calendrical data into a memorable and sacred form. The primary utility of this asterism was without doubt its role as a celestial compass for nocturnal travel. The long axis of the Southern Cross from Gamma Crucis to Alpha Crucis points almost directly toward the South Celestial Pole. By visualizing this axis and extending it out into the sky, travelers could determine south with remarkable accuracy, a crucial skill when crossing featureless deserts or dense bushland at night. The two pointer stars sitting a consistent distance away served as a perfect verification tool. If they were aligned vertically, the observer knew they were facing true south. This knowledge was meticulously recorded in rock art, not through literal star charts, but through symbolic representations that preserved the spatial relationships. At a site in New South Wales, for instance, an engraving of an eagle might be accompanied by two perfectly placed cupules, small, man-made holes pecked into the rock that mirror the exact position and angle of the pointer stars relative to the main constellation. Another panel might show a stingray figure with two dots aligned precisely where the pointers would be in the sky above it. These petroglyphs functioned as permanent, land-based replicas of the sky, allowing elders to teach the next generation how to read the stars by showing them the fixed, earthly version first. This celestial knowledge was deeply intertwined with ceremony and the marking of sacred time. The orientation and height of the Southern Cross in the night sky changed throughout the year, and these shifts were observed with great precision. Its position directly overhead at midnight might signal the arrival of the cool winter months, a time for large intertribal gatherings and the performance of important initiation ceremonies. The first evening appearance of the complete eagle or stingray shape after a period of being hidden by the sun could indicate the right time to begin harvesting a particular seasonal food source, like bogong moths in the Australian Alps or the ripe fruit of the bunya pine in Queensland. The rock art served to anchor these temporal signals to specific locations. A painting of the Southern Cross constellation inside a particular sacred shelter was not just a decoration. It was an instruction that this was the place to gather when that constellation reached a certain point in the sky. The art created a tangible link between the calendar in the heavens and the ceremonial calendar on the ground. Perhaps the most eloquent integration of this knowledge is found in the storytelling traditions preserved in the art. The narrative of the eagle and the hunters, for example, is a dramatic epic played out across the sky. The story explains the constellation's circumpolar nature, why it never sets below the horizon in most of Australia, as an eternal chase, with the hunters forever pursuing the eagle across the dome of the night. In the rock art, this story is frozen in time. A magnificent painting of the eagle in the Grampians National Park, known as Gariwerd to the Djab Wurrung and Jadwajali people, shows the bird in flight with two smaller figures below it representing the hunters. The composition is not arbitrary. The figures are arranged on the rock wall in a way that directly mirrors their positional relationship in the constellation. This transforms the gallery from a simple record into a performative space where the story can be told while simultaneously pointing to the real-life celestial actors above, creating a powerful, multi-sensory experience that connected myth, art, and science into a single, unforgettable lesson for all who are privileged to learn it. While Western astronomy has long focused on connecting the bright dots of starlight to form familiar shapes like Orion or Leo, Aboriginal skywatchers developed a profoundly different and innovative approach, reading the celestial sphere like a negative image. They turned their gaze to the profound darkness between the stars, to the rich, dusty lanes of the Milky Way itself, and there they discerned intricate shapes, the silhouettes of ancestral beings and animals formed not by light but by its absence. These are the dark constellations, a conceptual leap that required not just observation, but a deep, almost intuitive familiarity with the night sky's canvas, and their representation in rock art stands as one of the most brilliant expressions of this unique astronomical tradition. The most renowned of these is the emu in the sky, which we've touched upon, but this is just one figure in a vast, dark celestial menagerie. Across the continent, other dark constellations emerge from the galactic core. In the traditions of the Torres Strait Islanders, a great dark shark known as Badum swims through the Milky Way. Its body is formed by the dark dust clouds near the stars we call Scorpius, with its head pointed by the pointer stars of the Southern Cross and its tail stretching toward the constellation Sagittarius. For communities in northern Australia, a massive celestial crocodile is seen sprawled across the sky, its long, dark snout and powerful body etched into the void between the stars of the Milky Way. These were not vague, imaginary shapes. They were as fixed and recognizable as any Western constellation, serving as critical seasonal markers. The appearance of the dark shark in a certain part of the sky, for instance, signaled the beginning of the turtle mating season or the arrival of specific winds crucial for navigation. Depicting such a complex concept, the absence of light required a remarkable artistic ingenuity that is vividly displayed in rock art sites across Australia. Artists employed two primary techniques to capture these dark constellations. The first was the use of negative space. In many painted galleries, the figure of an emu or a shark is not defined by a painted outline, but is instead created by the untouched, natural surface of the rock, surrounded by a painted background of ochre. The animal emerges from the rock itself, a perfect metaphor for how it emerges from the dark space of the sky. The second technique, especially common in petroglyphs or rock engravings, was pecking and abrading. Artists would meticulously peck away the dark, weathered outer layer of a rock surface, the desert varnish, to reveal the lighter, fresher stone beneath. In doing so, they weren't drawing the dark constellation with a line. They were literally carving out the bright stars that surrounded it, allowing the untouched, dark rock between the carvings to form the shape of the celestial being. This is a breathtakingly sophisticated form of reverse engineering, a direct transposition of the negative space sky onto the negative space rock. Mastering this form of astronomy demanded a level of observational skill that is difficult to overstate. Identifying patterns in the faint, granular structure of the Milky Way's dust clouds requires exceptionally dark skies and eyesight trained over a lifetime. It necessitated a deep, patient understanding of the sky's texture and granularity, an ability to perceive subtle variations in luminosity and density that most modern city dwellers have completely lost. This knowledge was honed over countless nights spent on ceremonial business, hunting trips, or simply living in intimate connection with the natural world. Elders would teach the younger generations to first recognize the bright star patterns as reference points, the Southern Cross, the pointers, Scorpius, and then to use these as anchors to see the dark shapes that dwelled between and around them. It was a holistic way of seeing that viewed the bright and the dark not as separate entities, but as interdependent parts of a single, complete cosmic picture. This fundamentally different approach highlights a philosophical chasm between Western and Aboriginal astronomical systems. Western constellations are largely a product of the ancient Mediterranean world, designed for navigation across open seas and for tracking planetary movements against a fixed backdrop of stellar pins. They are connect-the-dots diagrams imposed upon the sky. Aboriginal dark constellations, by contrast, are emergent properties of the sky itself. They are not imposed from the outside but discovered from within the natural structure of the galaxy. They reflect a worldview that sees the cosmos as a living, breathing landscape, replete with its own topography of light and shadow rather than a distant, abstract grid. This isn't a primitive system. In many ways, it's a more nuanced one, acknowledging that what is not seen, the darkness, the space between, holds as much meaning and power as what is brightly visible. The rock art that preserves this knowledge is therefore more than just art. It is the permanent, earthly echo of a truly unique way of comprehending the universe. This seamless integration of sky and land finds its most profound expression in rock art panels that function as literal celestial maps, where constellations are not painted in isolation, but are deliberately positioned above or alongside detailed depictions of the local terrain. These compositions reveal a sophisticated cartography of the cosmos, designed to teach an intimate understanding of how the heavens interact with the Earth. One of the most compelling examples comes from the rock shelters of the Kimberley region, where artists painted the Wandjina sky beings directly above highly detailed renderings of the very river systems, gorges, and mountain ranges that lay just beyond the shelter's entrance. The placement is intentional and precise. A particular star or group of stars representing an ancestral being is shown positioned directly over a painted waterhole or a mountain pass. This wasn't merely symbolic art, it was a navigational aid. A traveler could learn from this panel that when a specific star culmination occurred directly above a certain mountain peak on the horizon, it indicated the direction to that permanent water source, effectively using the sky as a compass to navigate the often featureless and vast landscape below. These integrated skyland maps also served as sophisticated calendars, encoding ecological knowledge directly into the celestial narrative. In the rock art of the New England region of New South Wales, panels depict the emu in the sky constellation, positioned above a painted landscape showing emus foraging near a watercourse. The critical detail is the posture of the celestial emu relative to the terrestrial one. During the autumn nesting season, when the real emus are sitting and the celestial emu appears to be sitting, the painting acts as a direct instruction. The stars confirm the behavior of the animals, signaling that it is the optimal time to gather eggs. The art synthesizes astronomical observation with on-the-ground ethology, creating a multi-layered guide to survival that is both timeless and incredibly precise. The panel becomes a classroom where an elder can point to the sky, then to the painting, and then to the land itself, teaching the next generation how to read the interconnected signs of the universe. The ultimate expression of this concept is found in sites that themselves become part of the map. At certain locations, the natural rock formation is incorporated into the artwork to represent a specific landform. A protruding rock might be painted to represent a mountain, and above it, stars are depicted in the position they would occupy when directly over that real mountain. This creates a fixed, three-dimensional observatory where the art, the rock, and the actual landscape are in a permanent, aligned dialogue. To stand in such a place and watch the stars move into the position painted on the wall thousands of years ago is to experience a living library of knowledge, a testament to a culture that saw no division between the journey across the land and the great celestial roadmap shining down upon it. The deliberate placement of certain rock art galleries transforms them from passive repositories of knowledge into active celestial instruments, engineered to harness the movements of the sun, moon, and stars for ceremonial purposes. In the Kimberley region of Western Australia, numerous Wandjina rock art sites are not randomly located. They are precisely oriented within the landscape to capture specific celestial light shows during spiritually significant times of the year. One particularly eloquent example is a site where a narrow fissure in the cavern's ceiling acts like a cosmic aperture. For the vast majority of the year, the interior remains in shadow, the magnificent Wandjina figures watching from the darkness. Then, for just a few precious minutes at dawn on the day of the summer solstice, a single razor-sharp beam of sunlight pierces this natural aperture, traveling like a spotlight across the wall to illuminate only the eyes of the largest Wandjina figure. This fleeting event, repeating with unwavering annual precision, would have signaled the commencement of elaborate ceremonies linked to the arrival of the monsoon rains, the Wandjina's power literally ignited by the touch of the sun at its zenith. This architectural synergy extends beyond solar alignments to incorporate the very acoustics of the sites themselves, creating multi-sensory ceremonial spaces where sound and celestial event were perfectly harmonized. At certain ring-shaped stone arrangements and naturally resonant rock shelters, the geometry of the space amplifies specific frequencies in extraordinary ways. A clap of sticks or the deep resonance of a didgeridoo can produce echoes that seem to emanate from the rock art itself, or create a persistent reverberation that mimics the sound of a swarm of bees or the distant rumble of thunder. These acoustic properties were almost certainly known and exploited by ceremonial leaders. The timing of these sound-based rituals was often tied to the heavens. The first evening appearance of a particular star cluster might be the cue to begin a ceremony where the rhythmic chanting and clapping, amplified by the site's natural acoustics, were believed to call ancestral spirits from the sky whirled down to the earthly realm. The site itself became a transducer, converting human ceremony into a powerful spiritual signal aimed directly at the cosmos. The sophistication of this integration is perhaps best exemplified by sites that function as complete cosmological models. In Arnhem Land, some complex multi-level rock shelters appear to be designed as physical representations of the Aboriginal universe. The lower levels, adorned with paintings of fish, water lilies, and crocodiles, represent the earthly realm and the underwater world. Ascending to a higher chamber, the art shifts to depict totemic animals and ancestral human figures, representing the terrestrial landscape. Finally, the ceiling and highest, most difficult-to-reach niches are reserved for unequivocal celestial beings. The morning star Venus with her radiating lines of light, the Seven Sisters cluster, and the dark constellation of the Emu in the sky. The architectural journey through the shelter mirrors the cosmological journey from the water through the land and up into the heavens. Ceremonies conducted in such a space on the night of a lunar eclipse or the rising of a significant star would have been an immersive experience, physically walking participants through the layers of creation before culminating in a direct engagement with the celestial powers above. The entire ritual timed and triggered by the impeccable clockwork of the night sky. These intricate celestial maps and engineered sites culminated in what we might call the ultimate practical application, a permanent stone-bound calendar that governed the rhythm of life across the continent. Far beyond marking simple dates, these artworks functioned as sophisticated seasonal almanacs, where specific symbols, their placement, and even their interaction with sunlight became active indicators of the turning year. This system was not centralized but was instead a distributed network of knowledge, with different sites and symbols holding significance for specific regions and their unique ecological cycles. The calendar was written in a language of imagery and light, a language that everyone in the community could learn to read from the stone pages of their landscape. The activation of this calendar was often dependent on the sun's changing path. At a site in Carnarvon Gorge, for example, a particular painting of a grass seed, a vital food source, is strategically placed high on a rock wall. For most of the year, it remains in shadow, but for a brief period in late summer, a beam of sunlight strikes the painting with perfect clarity, its arrival coinciding exactly with the time when the real grasses in the surrounding area are in seed and ready for harvest. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a deliberate, engineered reminder. The illuminated painting served as a communal signal, a catalyst for action that mobilized the entire group to begin the crucial work of gathering. Similarly, in the Flinders Ranges, engravings of animal tracks leading to a waterhole might be positioned so that the midday sun only casts a shadow along their path during the dry season, visually reinforcing the knowledge of where to find precious, hidden water when it was most needed. The symbols themselves were dynamic, changing their meaning with the seasons. A series of concentric circles might represent a full waterhole during the wet season, a campsite during the cool months, and a sacred ceremonial ground during a specific stellar event. The rock art panel provided the constant symbol, while the community's shared knowledge provided the seasonal context. In many areas, symbols for rain or lightning would be painted over or emphasized with fresh ochre at the start of the wet season as part of renewal ceremonies, literally making the art reflect the current state of the world. This practice of periodically repainting, far from being vandalism, was a vital act of cultural maintenance, keeping the calendar accurate and the knowledge vibrant and relevant for each new generation. The teaching of this complex system was embedded in daily life and ceremony. Elders didn't lecture from a textbook, they took children to the sites and let the landscape itself do the teaching. As the winter solstice approached, an elder might bring a group to a specific shelter and point to a painting of the hunter Orion, explaining that his arrival in the evening sky meant the dingoes would soon be mating and that it was time to prepare their traps. The art was the permanent reference point, the unchanging visual aid that anchored the oral instruction. During initiation ceremonies, deeper layers of this calendrical knowledge were revealed. A young man might be shown how a seemingly abstract pattern of dots next to a kangaroo painting actually corresponded to the position of a star cluster that rose at the time when the kangaroo's fur was thickest, making it the ideal time to hunt for warm pelts. This graduated system of education ensured the knowledge was both preserved and protected, with the rock art galleries serving as the immutable syllabus for a science that sustained life for tens of thousands of years. This celestial storytelling reaches its most profound expression in the way these ancient artists mapped entire mythological epics across both the rock face and the starry dome above, creating a seamless narrative tapestry where the earthly and the cosmic are one and the same. A single story does not exist solely in the sky or solely on the rock. It flows between them, with the art acting as a permanent anchor point for the celestial drama playing out in a nightly performance. The composition of these rock art panels is never random. It is a deliberate visual script, a storyboard that captures key scenes, character relationships, and pivotal moments from the dreaming narratives that explain the very nature of existence. The symbols chosen, their arrangement in sequences, and their spatial relationships on the rock surface all directly mirror the patterns and events witnessed in the heavens, forging an unbreakable link between the story told, the story painted, and the story observed. Consider the widespread narrative of the Seven Sisters, a story so powerful it is told across continents. On a rock shelter wall in the Uluru region of South Australia, this epic is rendered not as a simple cluster of 7 dots, but as a dynamic scene of pursuit and cunning. The Seven Sisters are painted as a tight group of anthropomorphic figures, often shown running or huddled together for protection. Their postures convey motion and urgency. Positioned at a deliberate distance, often separated by a natural crack in the rock or a painted divider, is the larger, imposing figure of the pursuer, Niru, frequently depicted with exaggerated masculine features or carrying hunting implements. This compositional choice, the spatial gap between the pursuer and the pursued, is a direct reflection of the observable celestial reality, the eternal, fixed distance between the stars of Orion's belt and the Pleiades cluster. The rock art freezes a specific frame from the celestial movie, providing a visual key to understanding the nightly dance of these stars. These narratives do far more than just identify celestial objects. They serve as powerful conduits for explaining complex natural phenomena and imparting crucial moral frameworks. The story of the Seven Sisters, for instance, elegantly explains the annual disappearance and reappearance of the Pleiades cluster. Their vanishing below the western horizon is interpreted as the sisters hiding from Niru in the earthly landscape, while their subsequent reappearance in the dawn sky marks their daring escape and reemergence into the celestial realm. This directly ties an astronomical event to a relatable story of evasion and resilience. Furthermore, the story encodes a critical moral lesson about social law and kinship obligations. Neru's pursuit is almost always a transgression, a violation of the proper kinship rules that govern Aboriginal society. The art and the ceremony that surrounds it reinforces the consequences of breaking these laws, teaching younger generations about appropriate relationships and the importance of cultural protocols through the grand, unforgettable metaphor of the cosmic chase. The visual language itself is a sophisticated code for this celestial drama. Specific symbols act as a recurring shorthand that would have been instantly recognizable to initiated viewers. A series of concentric circles might represent a sacred site where the sisters rested during their flight, but that same symbol, when placed near a celestial figure, could also represent a particularly bright star or a moment of celestial creation. Lines connecting figures are rarely merely decorative. They often chart the path of an ancestor's journey, simultaneously mapping a route across the land and a line of stars across the sky. In some depictions of the emu in the sky narrative, the emu's body is not drawn at all. Instead, its form is suggested by a carefully arranged series of waterholes or engraved grooves that mirror the dark patches of the Milky Way, requiring the viewer to actively participate in completing the image, just as they must actively observe the negative space in the sky to see the celestial emu. This transforms the viewer from a passive observer into an engaged reader of this ancient, multi-layered text, deciphering a story where the rock art provides the earthly dialogue for the silent play unfolding in the stars above. What makes these parallels even more compelling is the possibility of ancient contact. While Australia was isolated for much of its history, there is strong evidence for sustained trade and cultural exchange between Aboriginal communities in the far north and their neighbors in what is now Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. The Trepang traders from Makassar are a well-documented example from recent centuries, but earlier connections likely existed. Could the shared perception of the Pleiades as a group of sisters have traveled along these ancient maritime routes, carried by storytellers and navigators who used the same stars to guide their voyages across the sea? It is not difficult to imagine such concepts being exchanged, adapted, and woven into local traditions over thousands of years. This exploration of shared astronomical ideas challenges the older, isolationist view of human history. It suggests that even across vast oceans and seemingly impenetrable cultural barriers, fundamental human curiosity about the night sky may have led to a convergent evolution of thought. Different cultures, gazing up at the same brilliant tapestry of stars, arrived at similar stories and systems not through direct contact, but through a shared human experience of wonder, a universal drive to find order in the cosmos, and a common need to use the heavens as a guide for survival. The Aboriginal celestial blueprint, therefore, stands not as an isolated wonder, but as a powerful testament to a collective human journey to understand our place in the universe, a journey written in the stars and etched in stone across the globe. Tragically, this ancient and sophisticated connection to the cosmos faced an existential threat with the arrival of European colonists, a cataclysm that severed knowledge lines stretching back tens of thousands of years. The colonization of Australia was not merely a territorial conquest, it was a systematic assault on the very foundations of Aboriginal culture, and the celestial knowledge encoded in rock art and ceremony was among its most profound casualties. From the outset, the settlers' worldview, steeped in agricultural and industrial progress, could not comprehend the deep intellectual and spiritual science they encountered. They saw land to be fenced, minerals to be extracted, and souls to be saved, utterly blind to the celestial libraries that stood in their way. This fundamental disconnect set the stage for a wave of destruction that would irrevocably damage humanity's oldest continuous astronomical tradition. The most direct and devastating loss was the physical destruction of countless rock art sites, the permanent repositories of this cosmic knowledge. Sacred rock shelters, deemed to be of no value by the newcomers, were dynamited for quarrying stone or to make way for pastureland. Panels adorned with intricate astronomical maps were defaced, whitewashed, or crudely carved over by settlers. The introduction of livestock led to further degradation, as cattle used rock shelters for shade, their bodies rubbing against and eroding ancient paintings, while their hooves churned up the soft soil floors, disturbing archaeological context that could have helped decode the art. Mining operations, driven by the hunger for coal, iron ore, and other resources, bulldozed entire hillsides and sacred mountains that were central to celestial narratives, turning multifaceted observatories into mere raw materials for industry. Beyond the physical vandalism, the colonization process deliberately targeted the human custodians of this knowledge, breaking the chain of transmission that had kept it alive for millennia. The forced displacement of Aboriginal people from their traditional lands was a catastrophic blow. Elders were torn from the very sites that served as their classrooms and calendars, severing the practical, hands-on connection between teacher, student, and the astronomical reference material etched in stone. Even more insidious were the mission and government policies of removing children from their families. These stolen generations were placed in institutions where they were forbidden to speak their native languages or practice their culture, ensuring they would not learn the stories of the Seven Sisters, the navigational secrets of the Southern Cross, or the calendrical signs of the emu in the sky. This institutionalized disruption created a gaping void in knowledge, where an entire generation was deprived of the opportunity to learn, and the elders were left with no one to teach. The imposition of the Western economic and temporal system further undermined the relevance and practice of traditional astronomy. The colonists' Gregorian calendar, with its fixed months and arbitrary start to the year, replaced the nuanced ecological timekeeping that was tied to the motions of stars, planets, and the moon. Where communities once gathered for ceremony when the Pleiades rose at dawn, they were now forced to labor on stations and in towns according to a clock and a schedule dictated by foreign seasons. The introduction of artificial lighting began to bleach out the night sky, diminishing the visibility of the fainter stars and the dark constellations of the Milky Way, effectively erasing parts of the celestial map for those living in settled areas. This gradual disconnection from the natural rhythms of the cosmos made the ancient knowledge seem less practical, accelerating its slide into obscurity. Despite this systematic campaign of suppression and destruction, the knowledge did not vanish entirely. It survived in the determined memories of elders who held fast to their traditions in the face of overwhelming pressure, and it endured in the continued ceremonial practices of communities who managed to maintain connection to their country. The resilience of this ancient science is a testament to its profound depth and importance. In recent decades, as we will explore, a powerful movement of reclamation and collaboration has begun, with Aboriginal custodians now leading the way in rediscovering and sharing the celestial wisdom of their ancestors, ensuring that the star maps written in stone will once again guide future generations. Yet against this backdrop of immense loss, a powerful and inspiring movement of reclamation is now flourishing, one that sees Aboriginal communities taking the lead in a modern revival of their celestial heritage. This is not a story of outside experts swooping in to save a dying tradition, but rather one of Indigenous knowledge custodians partnering with willing academics and educators to recover, document, and celebrate a science that never truly vanished. The driving force behind this renaissance comes from within Aboriginal communities themselves, where elders are determined to ensure the star knowledge that guided their ancestors for millennia is not lost but is instead passed on with renewed vigor to the generations to come. This movement represents a profound act of cultural resilience, a way of healing the wounds of the past by reaffirming the sophistication and enduring value of the world's oldest continuous astronomical tradition. Central to this revival are respectful collaborations that fundamentally redefine the traditional research model. Projects like The First Astronomers, a groundbreaking collaboration between astrophysicist Ray Norris and Aboriginal elders from across the continent, exemplify this new approach. Here, the Western scientist does not arrive as the expert with all the answers, but as a humble student and a facilitator. The process begins with elders sharing the stories and knowledge associated with a particular rock art panel or celestial event. Norris and his team then use the powerful tools of modern astronomy planetarium software that can recreate the night sky from 50,000 years ago, satellite imagery, and precise dating techniques, to test the hypotheses embedded within the oral tradition. The result is a powerful cross-verification where ancient knowledge validates modern science and vice versa, building a robust, mutually respectful body of evidence that is undeniable in its conclusions. This collaborative spirit extends far beyond academic papers into immersive, real-world experiences that are educating the wider public. At iconic locations like Uluru and Wataka National Park in the Central Desert, Aboriginal guides now offer astronomy tours that are transforming the tourist experience. Under the brilliant outback night sky, visitors don't just hear the Greek myths of Orion. They learn the epic story of the Seven Sisters from an Anangu perspective, understanding how the formation of Uluru itself is tied to that celestial chase. These tours are more than entertainment. They are a powerful form of cultural exchange and economic empowerment, allowing traditional owners to share their knowledge on their own terms and creating a new, profound appreciation for Indigenous science among people from all over the world. Within the education system, this ancient knowledge is finding a new and vital audience. Innovative programs are weaving Aboriginal astronomy into school curricula, from primary school science classes to university-level courses. Students might learn about the phases of the moon not just through diagrams, but by engaging with the symbolic representations found in Arnhem Land rock art. They study the solar system by first understanding how the emu in the sky connects to the seasonal behaviors of real animals. This approach does more than just teach astronomy. It fosters a deeper respect for Indigenous culture and offers a holistic model of science that integrates ecology, ethics, and spirituality, providing a crucial alternative to the often disconnected and sterile presentation of Western science. The work of preservation is also happening on the ground, with communities and archaeologists working together to protect the fragile rock art libraries that hold this cosmic knowledge. Using non-invasive technologies like high-resolution photogrammetry and three-dimensional laser scanning, teams are creating incredibly detailed digital records of sites threatened by erosion, vandalism, and climate change. These digital archives ensure that even if a site is damaged, its celestial map is preserved forever. Critically, this process is guided by Indigenous custodians who decide what information can be recorded and shared, ensuring that deeply sacred and secret knowledge remains protected according to traditional law. This melding of cutting-edge technology with ancient protocol safeguards the past while empowering the future. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of this revival is the way it is strengthening cultural identity among young Aboriginal people. For a generation often caught between two worlds, discovering the scientific brilliance of their ancestors is a source of immense pride. Initiatives like the installation of a star circle at the Sydney Observatory, which depicts Aboriginal constellations alongside Western ones, or the creation of beautiful, accessible books on Indigenous astronomy written by community members, provide tangible connections to a heritage that is both ancient and vibrantly relevant. This knowledge is no longer seen as a relic of the past, but as a living, evolving practice that can guide contemporary life, offering insights into environmental sustainability and our place in the cosmos that are desperately needed in the modern world. This is the ultimate goal of the revival, not to freeze this knowledge in time, but to ensure it continues to shine as brightly as the stars that first inspired it, guiding all Australians toward a more inclusive and enlightened understanding of this land and its incredible history. The true turning point in understanding this ancient science arrived when modern astronomy finally stopped talking and started listening, bringing its most powerful computational tools to bear on the oral traditions and rock art it had so long dismissed. This shift from speculation to verification began with a simple yet profound methodology. If a piece of art depicts a specific, rare celestial event and we can date the art, we should be able to match that event to the historical record. The results of applying this simple principle have been nothing short of revolutionary, providing irrefutable, data-driven validation for knowledge systems once relegated to the realm of myth. One of the most celebrated and compelling cases involves a seemingly enigmatic rock painting from the Arnhem Land Plateau. The art depicts a large, radiant circular form, almost like a sun, but it is positioned next to a crescent shape and surrounded by figures that appear to be watching it. For decades, its meaning was a mystery to outside researchers. When senior Dalaban elders were consulted, their interpretation was immediate and unequivocal. This was not a second sun, but a record of a total solar eclipse. The large circle was the sun's corona, visible only when the moon completely blocks the solar disk, and the crescent was the moon itself. The surrounding figures were ancestral beings witnessing this awe-inspiring celestial phenomenon. Armed with this interpretation, astrophysicists like Ray Norris from the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization used specialized software to calculate every total solar eclipse visible from that exact part of Arnhem Land over the last 50,000 years. The software accounts for the precise mechanics of Earth's rotation, the Moon's orbit, and the gradual changes in our planet's tilt over millennia. They cross-referenced this list of dates with scientific estimates for the age of the painting, obtained through techniques like radiocarbon dating of organic materials in the paint or optically stimulated luminescence dating of the sediment layers that buried the art shelter floor. The results pinpointed a handful of possible candidates, but one date emerged as the most compelling match, suggesting the painting could be an eyewitness account of an eclipse that occurred around the middle of the 17th century. This transforms the panel from an abstract image into a precise historical record, a dated entry in humanity's oldest continuous scientific logbook. Perhaps even more astonishing is the investigation into potential records of supernova, the catastrophic explosions of dying stars that can briefly outshine entire galaxies. In the same region, another painting shows a humanoid figure holding a crescent moon in one hand and a circular object that appears to be radiating light or energy in the other. Oral traditions associated with the site describe an ancestor stealing fire and throwing it into the sky, where it exploded with a brilliance that lit up the night for weeks. Using the same astronomical software, researchers wound back the celestial clock to search for supernova that were visible from Arnhem Land and would have been spectacular enough to warrant such a dramatic record. A prime candidate is the supernova that created the Vela remnant, an event that would have been visible in the southern sky around 13,000 years ago. While definitively matching art to a specific supernova remains challenging, the convergence of the oral narrative, the visual symbolism of the painting, and the known timing of such a massive stellar event provides a powerfully suggestive case for another instance of long-term knowledge preservation. Beyond dating single events, the digital reconstruction of ancient skies has proven the incredible accuracy of Aboriginal astronomical observation over staggering timescales. The Wurdi Yuang stone arrangement in Victoria, a large egg-shaped ring of basalt rocks, had long been suspected of having astronomical significance. When researchers used a theodolite to precisely map the positions of the stones, and then correlated these alignments with the historical positions of the Sun using astronomical software, they discovered something extraordinary. The major axis of the arrangement aligns almost perfectly with the setting Sun on the equinoxes. Even more significantly, several key stones mark the exact setting positions of the Sun at the summer and winter solstices. The software confirmed that these alignments were precise over 11,000 years ago, indicating the site has been used as a solar calendar for millennia. This isn't a rough approximation. It is a sophisticated, engineered observatory that required generations of precise observation to construct and maintain. This scientific validation does more than just confirm the antiquity of Aboriginal knowledge. It fundamentally challenges the timeline of human scientific achievement. For centuries, the history of astronomy has been written from a Eurocentric perspective, beginning with the Babylonians and Greeks. The evidence now emerging from the Australian continent demonstrates that sophisticated, precise astronomy was being practiced there tens of thousands of years earlier. These findings force a dramatic rewrite of that history, placing Indigenous Australians at the forefront of humanity's quest to understand the cosmos. The rock art galleries are not primitive curiosities but the data logs of the world's first astronomers, and modern science, with all its computational power, is finally providing the tools to read them. This profound connection to the cosmos is not a relic confined to ancient rock shelters. It is a vibrant, breathing tradition that continues to shape contemporary Indigenous life, identity, and creativity. Across Australia, a powerful cultural revival is underway, one where the star knowledge of the ancestors is being reclaimed, reinterpreted, and reinvigorated for new generations. Far from being a static historical record, this celestial wisdom is a dynamic force, actively guiding environmental stewardship, inspiring breathtaking modern art, and strengthening cultural pride in a rapidly changing world. This living tradition demonstrates that the ancient astronomical blueprint is not just about understanding the past, but about navigating the future. At the heart of this continuity are the elders, the revered knowledge custodians who have safeguarded these stories through generations of immense adversity. In communities from the top end to the arid interior, elders are consciously and deliberately passing this wisdom on to young people, often using the same methods their ancestors did. This isn't taught in a classroom with textbooks, it is learned on country under the vast outback sky. An elder might take a group of children to a sacred site as the emu in the sky begins its seasonal ascent, using the ancient paintings on the rock wall to explain how its posture signals the right time to gather emu eggs. The rock art remains the primary textbook, the night sky the interactive screen, and the elder the essential guide who makes the connection between the two. This intergenerational transmission is an act of profound resilience, ensuring that the cosmic law of the dreaming continues to inform a distinctly Indigenous way of seeing and being in the world. This celestial knowledge is also flourishing through the bold and innovative work of contemporary Indigenous artists, who are weaving ancient astronomical themes into powerful new forms. Artists like the late Gulumbu Yunupingu from the Yolngu Nation achieved international acclaim for her beautiful paintings of the Milky Way and the stars of the Garantja constellation. Her work, characterized by endless fields of delicate white dots on black or ochre backgrounds, is not an abstract pattern. It is a meticulous depiction of the universe as understood through her cultural lore, a way of sharing the Yolngu concept of connectedness, that we are all part of a vast shared cosmos. In urban galleries, artists are using acrylic on canvas, glass, and digital media to tell the stories of the Seven Sisters or the Wandjina, translating the narratives once confined to rock shelters into a modern lexicon that speaks to a global audience while remaining deeply rooted in ancient truth. The practical application of this knowledge in environmental management, known as cultural burning, offers a stunning example of its modern relevance. Western firefighting strategies have often favored total fire suppression, which can lead to a dangerous buildup of undergrowth and catastrophic wildfires. Aboriginal land management, by contrast, uses cool, controlled burns based on a deep understanding of seasonal cycles that are read from the stars. The heliacal rising of a particular constellation might signal that the weather conditions are right, the winds are favorable, and the plants and animals are in a state that makes a cultural burn both safe and beneficial. This practice, which is increasingly being integrated into official state fire management strategies, reduces fuel loads, encourages new growth for grazing animals, and protects biodiversity. It is a direct application of astronomical observation, honed over thousands of years, that is proving to be more effective and sustainable than many modern approaches, demonstrating how this ancient science offers critical solutions for contemporary challenges. Furthermore, this living connection to the stars is a cornerstone of cultural revival movements that are strengthening Indigenous identity. Astronomy tours led by Aboriginal guides at places like Uluru and the Warrumbungle Dark Sky Park have become powerful platforms for cultural exchange and education. Visitors from around the world don't just hear the Greek myths of Orion. They learn the epic story of the Seven Sisters from an Anangu perspective, understanding how the formation of the land itself is tied to that celestial chase. For the guides, sharing this knowledge is an act of empowerment, a way to assert the sophistication of their culture and build economic independence through tourism. For young Indigenous people, seeing outsiders value and marvel at their ancestral knowledge is a tremendous source of pride, helping to heal the wounds of colonialism by reaffirming the brilliance and enduring relevance of their heritage. This ongoing celestial practice ultimately shows us that Aboriginal astronomy is far more than a historical curiosity. It is a complete and functioning worldview. It provides a holistic framework that connects spirituality to ecology, ethics to science, and the individual to the cosmos. In a modern world grappling with environmental crisis and a sense of disconnection, this ancient blueprint offers a different way forward, one based on observation, reciprocity, and a deep understanding that our survival is inextricably linked to the health of the land and the rhythms of the sky above it. The living tradition of Aboriginal astronomy is a testament to the fact that the most advanced knowledge is not always that which looks toward the future, but sometimes that which listens most carefully to the wisdom of the past, ensuring that the songs of the stars continue to guide us for generations to come. Despite the profound wisdom they hold, these ancient celestial libraries face a relentless onslaught of threats that jeopardize their very existence. The soft, porous sandstone that serves as the canvas for much of this rock art is incredibly vulnerable to the elements. Driving rain, which is becoming more intense and frequent with climate change, steadily erodes intricate details, washing away pigments that have survived for millennia. Scorching sun and extreme temperature fluctuations cause the rock surface to flake and peel in a process known as exfoliation, taking with it irreplaceable segments of star maps and ancestral narratives. In coastal and tropical regions, salt spray and high humidity accelerate decay, while the growth of algae, fungi, and microbial biofilms slowly obscures the art under a green or black shroud that is incredibly difficult to remove without causing further damage. Each of these environmental processes acts like a slow-moving vandal, gradually blurring the lines of this ancient celestial code. Human activity, however, presents a far more immediate and devastating danger. Despite their cultural significance, many sites lack adequate physical protection, leaving them exposed to casual and deliberate vandalism. The urge to leave a modern mark on an ancient wall has led to names, dates, and graffiti being scratched or painted directly over priceless artworks, forever destroying the original composition. In some tragic cases, sites have been targeted by theft, with entire sections of rock containing art being sawn away to be sold on the black market, severing the connection between the artwork and its original landscape context, which is often essential to its astronomical meaning. Even well-meaning visitors can cause harm through the cumulative effects of touch, which introduces oils from the skin that degrade pigments, or by inadvertently altering the microenvironment of a shelter simply by their presence. The most large-scale and systemic threats come from industrial development and resource extraction. mining companies seeking coal, iron ore, or bauxite have repeatedly sought permits to operate in areas known to contain dense concentrations of rock art, valuing the minerals beneath the ground more than the cultural treasure on its surface. The blasting, drilling, and earth-moving involved can completely obliterate sites or bury them under tons of waste rock. Similarly, infrastructure projects for roads, housing, and agriculture have plowed through country without a full understanding of what lay there, destroying irreplaceable galleries before they could even be properly documented. These actions represent a clash of values where short-term economic gain is prioritized over the preservation of a heritage that belongs to all humanity. Beyond the physical threats, the process of interpreting this knowledge is fraught with profound ethical complexities. For generations, Western researchers treated this cultural patrimony as a free-for-all, extracting information without consent, publishing sacred secrets, and often failing to give proper credit to the indigenous knowledge holders who provided the keys to understanding. This extractive approach caused deep harm and broken trust, as intimate spiritual knowledge was displayed out of context and without permission. Today, a fundamental shift is underway, moving towards a model of research that is led by or conducted in full partnership with the traditional owners of the land. This means that Aboriginal communities have the ultimate say in what can be studied, how it is studied, and most importantly, what findings can be shared with the wider world. This ethical framework recognizes that not all knowledge is meant for public consumption. Certain stories, symbols, and sites are restricted, accessible only to initiated individuals who have undergone the proper training and ceremonial preparation. Disclosing this information can constitute a serious breach of Aboriginal law. Therefore, modern collaborative projects begin with extensive community consultation and the establishment of clear protocols. Indigenous ranger groups are increasingly taking the lead in both monitoring the condition of sites and in guiding researchers, ensuring that any documentation is done respectfully and appropriately. The goal is no longer just scientific discovery, but cultural empowerment using tools like three-dimensional laser scanning and high-resolution photography to create records that serve the community's own preservation and educational goals on their own terms. The fight to protect this heritage is a race against time, but it is one that is seeing growing awareness and innovative solutions. National Park Services are working with traditional owners to install discreet, non-intrusive barriers and monitoring systems to protect vulnerable sites. Community-led education programs are teaching both Indigenous youth and the wider public about the significance of the art, fostering a sense of shared responsibility for its care. Legal battles are being fought and, in some cases, won to block developments that threaten sacred areas. The preservation of these celestial galleries is about more than saving old paintings. It is about safeguarding a unique human intellectual achievement, a testament to our universal desire to understand the cosmos and a living culture's deep and enduring connection to the stars above. What we are witnessing in these ancient galleries is more than a regional curiosity. It represents one of humanity's oldest and most continuous scientific traditions, a comprehensive system of knowledge that offers a fundamentally different way of understanding our place in the cosmos. For tens of thousands of years, Aboriginal cultures engaged in a sustained, rigorous project of celestial observation, developing complex classification systems and theoretical models that rivaled and in some ways surpassed those of other ancient civilizations. This was not a passive watching of the stars, but an active, empirical science deeply woven into the practicalities of survival, law, and spirituality. Where Western science often seeks to separate the observer from the observed, Aboriginal astronomy presents a holistic framework where the sky, the land, and the people are part of an interconnected whole, a philosophy that allowed for a nuanced and dynamic understanding of the universe that modern science is only beginning to appreciate. This profound knowledge system directly challenges the long-held Western narrative of scientific progress, which has traditionally been charted as a linear journey from ancient Greece through the Enlightenment to the present day, largely ignoring or dismissing contributions from other parts of the world. The evidence from Australia forces a dramatic and necessary rewrite of this history. The precise solar markers at Wurdi Wong, the long-term records of lunar cycles in Arnhem Land, and the accurate oral histories describing supernova and eclipses all demonstrate that sophisticated, evidence-based astronomy was being practiced on the Australian continent for millennia before the rise of European civilizations. This isn't a matter of claiming priority, but of recognizing the pluralism of scientific discovery, that different cultures, using different methods and philosophical frameworks, can arrive at profound and accurate understandings of the natural world. It reveals that science is not a single, monolithic tradition but a diverse human endeavor. The methodologies of this ancient science offer powerful alternative models for modern researchers, particularly in the fields of long-term environmental monitoring and sustainability. Aboriginal astronomical knowledge is inherently interdisciplinary. A single symbol in a rock art panel can simultaneously convey information about a star's position, the breeding cycle of an animal, the fruiting time of a plant, and the proper ethical code for interacting with both. This integrated approach stands in stark contrast to the hyper-specialization of modern science, which can sometimes struggle to synthesize data across different fields. In an age of climate crisis, we are beginning to see the limitations of a disconnected perspective. The Aboriginal model, which sees ecological health, celestial patterns, and human responsibility as indivisible, provides a timeless blueprint for sustainable living, demonstrating how detailed observation of nature, sustained over generational timescales, can yield a science that is both empirically rigorous and inherently life-affirming. Furthermore, this wisdom offers a crucial philosophical counterweight to the impulses of modern space exploration and commodification. As we look to the stars with ambitions of colonization and resource extraction, Aboriginal astronomy presents a worldview based on relationship and responsibility rather than conquest. The sky is not a void to be conquered or a resource to be mined. It is a sacred space, a living narrative, and a crucial part of a balanced cosmological order. The stories of the Seven Sisters or the transgressions of the fishermen in the Kanu Julpan are not just myths. They are sophisticated teaching tools that encode moral principles about kinship, law, and the consequences of overreach. This perspective invites a more humble and ethical engagement with the cosmos, reminding us that advancement without wisdom is a dangerous path. Ultimately, the global significance of this knowledge lies in its potent demonstration of the diversity of human intelligence. It expands our very definition of what science can be, showing that it can be stored in song cycles and painted on stone as effectively as in mathematical equations written on paper. It proves that long-term, cumulative knowledge can be preserved and transmitted through oral tradition and artistic expression with remarkable accuracy. The survival of this living tradition against all odds is a gift to all of humanity, a priceless window into a different way of knowing, a different way of seeing the intricate clockwork of the universe. It challenges us to look up at the night sky not just with telescopes and instruments, but with a renewed sense of wonder, storytelling, and reverence, recognizing that the oldest maps to the stars were not printed on paper, but were written in the land and sung in the stories of the world's first astronomers. Standing before these ancient galleries, we are witnessing far more than simple art. We are in the presence of one of humanity's most sophisticated and enduring scientific traditions. This is a celestial blueprint of breathtaking complexity, encoding precise lunar calendars that track the months, solar observatories that mark the solstices with engineered accuracy, and intricate star maps that guided navigation across a vast continent. Every dot, every figure, every alignment was a deliberate entry in a cosmic ledger, a data point gathered over millennia of unbroken observation. but to label this as merely early science is to miss its profound genius. This knowledge was never intended to be isolated in a book or a laboratory. It was woven into the very fabric of existence, connecting the practicalities of the hunt to the motions of planets and the timing of ceremony to the life cycles of the stars. This represents a holistic worldview of extraordinary depth, one that saw no division between the empirical and the spiritual, the celestial and the terrestrial. The sky was not a distant realm of cold, impersonal forces. It was a living, narrative landscape, an extension of the Earth itself. A story about the seven sisters was simultaneously a moral lesson on kinship, an explanation for the movement of the Pleiades cluster, and a signal for the change of seasons. The appearance of the emu in the sky directly dictated the gathering of food, while the journey of Venus orchestrated the rhythm of sacred rituals. This was a complete system of understanding where astronomy was inseparable from law, ecology, storytelling, and identity. It fostered a way of life based on deep observation, reciprocity, and an unwavering sense of responsibility to the interconnected web of life, a philosophy of existence that modern society is desperately striving to rediscover. The responsibility now falls upon us all to appreciate and protect this extraordinary cultural heritage. These rock art sites are not just Australian treasures. They are a priceless part of humanity's shared intellectual history, a library of stone whose oldest shelves were carved during the last ice age. Their preservation requires our vigilant support through respecting sacred sites, advocating for their protection against industrial threats, and endorsing the collaborative research that allows Indigenous communities to lead the way in safeguarding and interpreting their own knowledge. This is not a passive act of conservation, but an active choice to value a different form of wisdom, to listen to the voices of the world's first astronomers. Ultimately, this ancient wisdom extends an invitation to us all to reconsider our own relationship with the night sky. In our modern world, drowned in artificial light and consumed by the immediate, we have largely severed our cosmic connection. We have forgotten the stories written in the stars and the comfort of finding our place within a vast, ordered universe. The Aboriginal celestial blueprint challenges us to look up again with fresh eyes, not just with telescopes but with wonder. It asks us to consider how this ancient knowledge, born of patience, deep observation, and a profound reverence for the natural world, might illuminate a path forward, guiding us toward a more sustainable and meaningful existence, reconnected to the rhythms of the earth and the eternal dance of the